Starting.
Hi, welcome to the Downtown Arts Center in Chinatown, Honolulu. I'm Floyd Takeuchi, and with me is Charles Smith, who's going to be our special guest for the next hour. We're at the gallery, which is showing this month a special exhibit on hula to the eyes and hands of 12 artists in Honolulu, including the work of the estate of John and Kate Kelly, who are, well, he's well known, she's less so. That's part of the attraction of the show. So Cha is the manager of the arts collection there at Kelly Estate, and Cha will tell us a little bit about the Kellys in Hawaii and what led up to the artwork that we see in the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Floyd. Yes, I wanted to kind of give an overview of the ways in which the Kelly, Kate, and John projected and depicted Hawaiian people, and how that really made a difference in the culture here, because I think it helped give the world a better understanding of Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian people. So they lived in a community that was still considered a Hawaiian community at the time. They lived near a fishing village and became friends with people in the neighborhood, and actually some of the people that they were friends with became their models, and some of these relationships lasted for a whole generation. For example, let's go through some of this. This is John and Kate, and this particular model, her name is Leilani, and she was she was a model, a very favorite model actually of John and Kate, and posed for images for years. So here she is at about 13, and she was, throughout the years, she became a model, was a steady model for them, and here she is as an adult. So their relationships lasted. They with their models many times. This is Leilani. She's, I think, 83 in this photograph. She has passed away since then, but she was at the opening of the John and Kate Kelly exhibit in 2005 at the Academy. They had a major exhibit at Kelly's. And so this was a way of depicting some of the images of Hawaiian people, that they were not romanticized, they were not objectified and stereotyped, but appeared quite realistically. There's a lay seller. This gentleman, Okalama, was a La'au Lapa'au practitioner, which is a herbal medicine practitioner. He lived in a grass house. Mokihana, she won many awards and was a very favorite in many. He entered many printmaker contests, exhibits, and she was quite I touched this. I touched the cord. Anyway, so John was an etcher, and his work was and one of the things that John did was he was a co-founder with Charles Bartlett, another local artist, they founded the Printmakers Association here in Honolulu. And actually, Honolulu Printmakers was one of the first organizations of printmakers in the country. It was one of the first that emerged. There was California printmakers and LA printmakers, and there were a couple of printmaking organizations in the Midwest, which he was involved with. So I think his helping get things going here helped put Hawaii on the map, and some of the artists that were in that printmaking community were benefited from his exposure. He often won, excuse me, he often won first prize or you know, like best of show in many of his printmaking in many of the exhibits. So these images would then appear in the newspaper and they would just go all over the place. So this was how I think it really helped project a really positive image of Hawaiian people. This is Kanani, who really, to me, she looks like she's saying, give me my land back. This is Tutu Harvest, who was, helped Kata and John actually take care of John Jr. So she was really close to the family and was around all the time, and I think it was a lot of her friends that, like, she was introducing John and Kate to a lot of her friends, and they became quite good friends, everyone. She was quite a character. This is an image of a Chinese Hawaiian. This is Ka'onohi. And one of the things about John was he kept the Hawaiian names. He didn't, you know, he kept their actual names. This was who this was. Spear fisherman. So his depiction of culture and their modes of survival were really important for people to understand why the loss of land was devastating. Now this is the menu covers, which is really the kind of the introduction that most people have to John Kelly. Most people are familiar with these images. They're on coffee cups and pencils and all that stuff. And so they, even though they're more romanticized of an image of Hawaiian people, they still are very respectful in depicting the culture in fishing and picking ulu, breadfruit. So there's sort of harvesting. So there's more of there's still a very strong respect of Hawaiian culture.
What years were these covered?
Those were, they were commissioned in about 43. I think they were finally finished in about I think they got published around 45, 44.
So just at the end of the war. Yeah,
and they were given to they were Matson commissioned these, the passenger ocean liners. They were given to the customers, the clients, and they were, you know, so they went literally all over the world. So that's another way that image of Hawaiian people got distributed. This is an image that John did. He was commissioned by the Army to do a poster for recruitment, and he did a rather shell-shocked soldier. So they chose not to. They chose not to select it for their recruitment. I don't know why. I thought it was a great political statement.
Did he end up doing another one that was published?
No, it was different. Take it or leave it. Now this is moving into Kate's photographs. Kate was John's wife. She was an amazing sculptor, was an award-winning sculptor, sculpted many busts of Hawaiian heads and people, and her photographs are really very little known. Many of her photographs John used to create images of, like, some of the portraiture. But this is from a series. The last year I've been digitizing Kate's photographs and uncovering really this treasure trove of amazing depiction of Hawaiian culture. This is taken at Aloha Tower, and you can see the old car in the background. That's how long ago it was. It was early 20s.
The Kellys came to Hawaii
In 1923. Hawaiian people really, it kind of became, this was one of the industries that they developed as they were being pushed off their land and not being able to survive from their own subsistence farming, and so they catered to the tourists. And this is at Aloha Tower where that's the pier that the ships landed, where the ships landed.
So Kate Kelly would meet the liners and
She would.
promote her husband's work.
When she found out, she would kind of, she must have known somebody who was one of the stewards or something, because she would find out that some famous person was going to be on a ship, and so she would go down there with and say, oh, you know, this is, you should come to the house and see our image, you know, if you want to, if you're interested in Hawaiian art, these are people that are, you know, we have an artist here in town who will show you his art. So actually she drew quite a few people out to the house in that way. I think it became kind of this talk story amongst the passengers that the Kelly house had a gallery.
And the Kelly house is still there.
It is, yes it is.
It's on Black Point.
Yeah. This is a really great image of a tourist pulling out her money for her to get paid. You can see Aloha Tower in the background there. And this is Kate's picture of Kate with her, this was in a newspaper, but it shows her depiction of, she created these miniatures. When John first arrived, after a few years, he got a job with the Honolulu Star-Bulletin and worked there as their art director for several years, about 6 years. And after that, he really couldn't stand it. He really wanted to just do art full time. But the transition of him selling art, and they needed some income. So she was creating these miniatures that became hugely popular, and she was actually able to support the family with these things. But they're not objectifying the Hawaiian people. They're not coconut bra, stuff like that. So this was a depiction of images that was a really strong, powerful, I think some really powerful images of lions. There's another perspective of her miniatures. They're about 6 inches tall. They actually started a trend, these things. That's sort of the origin of the things that aren't so great that you see on dashboards.
Are these collectibles today?
I would imagine so. I have never seen one. I've never seen actual finished product. We have a bronzed version of the hula dancer on display here at the Downtown Art Center as part of the art exhibit. But yeah, I haven't actually seen any of these in real life. They were porcelain, so they may not be, they may not have survived the ages so well. And Kate was a very adventuresome person and very open to all kinds of, she was open to learning all kinds of things about religion and different aspects of what was going on in Hawaii. So one of the things she learned about was the Baha'i faith, and this is an image of Abdullah Baha, Abdul Baha, which John created a print of for the club, for the organization. They were actually pretty well established here by the time they got here. They started at the turn of the century. And she also explored Buddhism and sort of investigated what that was all about, and the images that John came up with around that were pretty incredible. He did a series of Bodhisattvas. These are just a couple of them. That's a pretty amazing image there that technically no one can quite figure out how he accomplished that. So this is just Kate and a very good friend of hers, Huikina, and they were inseparable really. There are so many photos of both of them, and they did picnics together and harvested things together. Here they're harvesting hala for weaving. Then the other thing the other involvement that Kate had in the community was to do these commemorative plaques. This commemorative plaque is of Liliolani's song, commemorating her song of Aloha Oi. So this is actually Tutu. She's seen here with Tutu. This is what the newspaper took for this image. But this is now at Washington Place, so you can go see this plaque. And this plaque is a commemoration of Amelia Earhart's solo flight, and she can be. It's at the Diamond Head Lookout, so that's still up there. Here's a close up of that one. So that's really kind of it for these slides, and I'm happy to take any questions. And Floyd, if you have other kinds of questions that you want to ask.
The show at the Downtown Arts Center is focused on hula.
Right.
Did John Kelly do a lot of hula work?
He did a tremendous amount of hula work. Kate was actually in a halau, which is pretty unusual for a haole person. She was actually the first haole in the Skies halau. And I think that helped influence him. And there were many, they were in the community where people were doing hula for each other. And her photographs at this exhibit depict some of those picnics and times together in the backyard of people just doing informal hula. So he explored hula in many medium, which was in several media, which was an unusual thing for him. He didn't really go beyond etching that much. He did an oil painting, and he's done pastels and drawings of hula dancers, in addition to numerous hula etchings in color and black and white. So yeah, they're all here at the exhibit.
So the pictures of the backyard hula are quite remarkable. They just show folks just enjoying themselves.
Right, exactly. Just casually, how hula emerged, right? So it wasn't a performance art or a competition. It was just for people doing it for each other.
And are most of the photographs that Kate Kelly took which are in the show from that area around where they live?
I think so, yes. I think they are either from Kololo or from around that area, around Ka'ala somewhere.
So we should note that the photographs in the show are contemporary photographs. They weren't printed in the 1930s or 20s.
Right. They were printed from the original negative, but not. They're not. Yeah, Kate didn't print those. Right.
We want to make that very clear. They were based on scans of the negatives, which
yes.
What condition were the negatives in?
Actually, most of them were in very good condition, even though they were kind of thrown in a box. Kate was been a photographer, I think, most of her life, and there were glass negatives as well that didn't do as well surviving, and there were negatives that were kind of rolled up and stuck together that didn't quite make it. And she had taken most of those, I think, in Europe in the 1890s. So sort of understandable why they didn't survive. But it's kind of amazing that her photos, or that her negatives really, they did so well. So that's, they had to be scanned because to be preserve them, I mean, that's the best way to preserve them.
They're very fragile.
Yeah, well, they're not so fragile, I mean, they're in pretty good shape. But, I don't think that they would, I mean, because of the size of them doesn't fit any scanner anymore, they have to be done professionally, and, yeah.
So you also have 3 pieces in the show that are pretty unique. Two are 40 inches wide, they're quite large. There are watercolors that John Kelly did in the 50s.
Yes,
Can you tell us about those?
Well, I don't know a lot about them. I kind of discovered them a few years ago, and they were this kind of at the bottom of something, at the bottom of a drawer. And so these images really depict all kinds of folks in Hawaii, which is really this beautiful depiction of Samoan people and all kinds of folks, Japanese people, Chinese people, there's just every kind of folk. There's surfer boys, it's just a line of all the folks in Hawaii. It's really a lot of fun to see it. Oh yeah, we could show this.
Yeah, so
that's great, sure.
These are, of course, much smaller than the originals, but this is
Right.
Waikiki in the afternoon and Waikiki at night.
You may have to hold them up higher for the camera.
And interestingly, Mr. Kelly put himself in one of the pictures. So if you look very carefully at night, this holly fellow with a
The
towel
extra
around
white
it.
guy.
He's got a cigar. Glasses is John Kelly. He put himself in the picture.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
This is the
It's
first
very
time-
joyful. It's a joyful images, and they're very beautifully colored and detailed, unbelievably detailed for watercolor. It's incredible.
And the first time it had been seen in public.
It is. It's the first time they've ever been displayed at all.
There's also a quite remarkable oil painting that John Kelly did.
Yes, there is.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that oil painting was, he didn't do very many oils at all. And the fact that he did it it's done of a woman named, the title of the image is Bird of Paradise, which are the flowers in the background. And I don't really know, too much about it other than it was in terrible shape, and I had it repaired, and it looks extraordinary now, and it's for sale.
Of all the pieces in the show, it's probably the closest to what would have been on his easel or his drawing board when he finished it originally. So that's what was particularly thrilling about that.
Yeah.
The colors glow.
Mm-hmm. Right, they do. That's extraordinary.
So he never did very many oils.
Not too many. No, not too many. He did a few, but really not that many. I just want to hit the next slide because it's all about here.
Yeah. You also have some pieces that he did that show the progression of an image for his prints. So there were two different versions of the print. The young man, for example, that he had two different prints of.
Oh yes, he did. Well, he did an etching. He did a black and white etching that's really kind of this outline of a hula dancer, a male hula dancer, and then he did that same exact plate in color. And the contrast is pretty strong. The color would just really explode, but the black and white one has so much strength. It's a really beautiful image.
And there are also examples of the photographs that Kate Kelly took and how he transitioned those into print.
Yes, there's several examples of Kate took photographs and John based his etchings on them. He used them to he actually copied them. He was a draftsman. He worked for newspapers and he was a meticulous draftsman, and he was able to copy basically the image the photograph onto his plate. And there's several images that we have, the photograph and then the etching that really is exactly the same. And we have there are two here that are hula dancers that that pairing.
Do you know roughly how long it took him to produce a print off the center?
You know, I think it took at least all day to do one. I think that it was, I don't know for sure, but I remember stories when Marion was alive, his daughter-in-law, who was also a model, and my mother-in-law, who would tell stories of John being in there 6 or 8 hours with one plate, and just would barely come out for food. He was pretty obsessed.
Where did he learn to do printmaking?
You know, I think he's really self-taught. Because he was in the newspaper business, he worked in reverse. So he was able to understand, his brain worked that way. And he was able to basically, I mean, he did go to art school. He went to art school in San Francisco for 4 years. So he may have learned it there, I don't know. I know that Kate took a class with Hoʻopuka, who's a famous printmaker here in Honolulu, and was a teacher at UH. And she took a class on dry point etching from him, and I'm sure shared some of her, tips about that, but he had already published, in fact, he published that spear fisherman in a magazine in Honolulu in 1926, and she took her class in 1928, so there's kind of this myth that, Kate taught John how to etch, but no. But I'm sure she, gave him all the information she had from the class. And she also etched. She had many etchings as well. They're all on her website. Kelly Art.
Kelly Art Hawaii.
Yeah, kellyarthawaii.com.
So you also have for sale, along with some cards and other, and these pieces, by the way.
Yeah, those are really high resolution prints of the two 40-inch watercolors that are also for sale. Yeah, we have a giclée for sale and some offset prints that he did for the Star Bulletin, and those are affordable. And then the prints that are, the originals are original etchings, and they're expensive, but they're not terrible, and they're actually amazing investments because the prices, even since I've been working on this, have quadrupled. So
the offset prints you have are hula dancers. People have gone.
Yes, because I stuck with the theme.
And were those from a book, or what were they?
Yes, there were two books that he did those offset prints for. One was called Etchings and Drawings of Hawaii, and the other was called the Hula Book, according to John Kelly. It's like hula according to John Kelly is the name of it. And yeah, there's some really fun images in that.
So the books are hard to find and often not in great condition when you find them.
Yes, the Hula Book in particular is extremely brittle. I thought about offering it for sale, but people wouldn't even have been able to get it home. So I just felt like it wasn't fair to buy this and it's going to break on your way to the car.
But the offset prints are in good shape.
Yes, the offset prints they're matted and they're mounted on acid-free foam core, so they're very stable. The ones that are hidden here, for sure, they're very stable.
And we should say that they are for sale. They're about 11 by 14s. They're quite large.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're for sale for about under $50.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
affordable for.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what's how deep is the Kelly Hula collection?
The hula? Well, a lot of what he did is up here on the wall. There's a few images that are duplication. Nothing's the same, nothing duplicated. But there are other versions of a few of them, but not very many.
So if someone's seen the show, we get a pretty good view of his
Yes.
understanding.
Oh, definitely. This represents basically his universe of hula.
John Kelly had an interesting background. He spent a lot of time as a young man on reservations in the Southwest.
Right. He lived on a cattle ranch. his dad owned a cattle ranch, and so he was a bit of a cowboy, which is really why he kept a bandana on for, basically is a representing his cowboy years. But yeah, he stayed on the ranch for a long time and was actually, even as a young boy, he was published in the newspaper in his prints. He did prints then. He did some kind of a lead print thing that got published. I'd never seen it, but that was like in the 1890s. And then he came to San Francisco to attend school when he was about 20, and then he went to work for the San Francisco Examiner and worked there for 15 years, and then he became an ad person. He became an ad. I mean, he did ads there, but he became an independent freelance advertiser. Worked for a couple of different firms. I mean, basically it was the early Mad Men scenario over there. But that's how he ended up in Hawaii. He took a job, a commission job to do some work in Manikai, some development.
But he also spent time as a young man on Indian reservations in South.
Well, at the time he was in Arizona, there were probably, 0.01% white people. So he was a Native American population, and so there's no question that he was involved in, I think it probably did inform his appreciation of indigenous people here, being around people all the time and having them be in his life was definitely influenced him, for sure. And Kate had an amazing life too. She grew up in Berkeley, and her mom was a suffrage activist and headed up the suffrage chapter for the East Bay, and was very involved in politics and suffrage. And so Kate, in high school, went with her all over the place to promote the vote. And her mom was quite a character. Yeah, she even was on horseback with Susan B. Anthony in Yosemite at a conference with her, a suffrage conference.
Was Kate Kelly self-taught in photography and sculpting?
In photography, yes. In sculpting, she learned sculpting from the college. She went to Partington, which became the San Francisco Art Institute after the earthquake. But she was there for about 4 years as well. After John graduated, she started, and really, she just gravitated immediately to clay and started working in sculpture almost immediately, and became, in her class, she was like, as a freshman, she was winning scholarships that the seniors were vying for, so she had a very strong talent for sculpting, for sure.
And how many of her pieces remain sculpted?
Oh, probably no more than a half a dozen. Yeah, I mean, the Academy has, I think, 3 or 4 of her heads. They bought one when she was doing the miniatures. She did a couple of commissions, and one of them was for the Academy. So she was able to sell one to them, and the rest were, I mean, people bought them, but I don't know where they are. I don't know where they all are. We have a few in our collection. Yeah.
Where are the surprises in the Kelly collection?
What are the surprises? I think one of the biggest surprises is Kate's body of photography. I think it's just an incredible collection that I can't wait to share with the public, because people are going to recognize their ancestors. They're almost all Hawaiian people in the 30s and the 40s, and it's astounding. It's astounding. They're beautiful, beautiful photographs. So that's one of the surprises, and I think I think his technique is also, I mean, it's not a surprise because it's not really, people have seen his work, but to really understand, to really see from the progression of his early work and be kind of hands-on with his earlier work, and then how he progressed to ultimately, basically, the Bodhisattva was some of his last work that he did that is so sophisticated and complex. It's incredible accomplishment of the technique, and his technique has never been approached. It's not even close. People have not. He was quite the master, and he was really quite a genius with aquatint especially. So it's a joy to be able to see this work all the time and work with this. But yeah, the surprises, I can't be surprised too much anymore. I find something and I realize, oh wow, I don't remember seeing that ever before. But yeah, it's pretty fun.
When they were alive, they had a social life primarily around the blind community.
Yes, I think so. They always chose to hang out with their friends and neighbors, and they weren't really into going to the receptions and the openings. And I mean, John had to be dragged. He didn't even have an outfit. He had to borrow a suit coat to go to these things. So it just wasn't where he was at. He just was not. That wasn't his focus. He was much more comfortable. He was kind of a shy guy, even though he was very outgoing. And I mean, he was shy, but he was very friendly and had a great sense of humor. He was hysterical. His notes and his caricatures and his cartoons and all these little the anecdotes and stuff he has a really great sense of humor, like just very tongue in cheek. So yeah, I think they both really preferred to be involved with their friends in the neighborhood.
The photograph you showed of John K. Kelly initially. She looked very proper in her.
Yes, that must have been one of the dress-up days, for sure.
Her granddaughter surprised me by saying that she was surprised to see her grandmother in shoes. She really remembered her grandmother wearing shoes. Right, exactly. I think that sums it up. Right. Yeah, Kate also wore pants a lot, which was, in the 20s and 30s was really frowned upon for women. And she was such a trailblazer that she just was defied all the shoulds. They both lived long enough to see David come to Hawaii.
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, they did. So, I mean, that's.
Do we have any work from that very late period?
I think that the Bodhisattvas were his latest work in the 50s. He died in 62, so it was, yeah. He didn't, he worked up until the end. He did etchings. I don't know what his last etching was, but.
And these pieces were done in the late 50s?
I think the early 50s, late 40s. Yeah. After the war, when tourism started coming, you can see the mix of all different folks there, including people who are kind of sunburned. And there's a Navy person there, a couple Navy guys, there's surfers, there's mahus, everybody's in there, kids. There's a laymaker sitting in the bottom of the group.
When you first mentioned this to me as a possibility for the show, I was thinking what was the hula connection? And then we saw the hula dancer.
Yeah, right.
They're stunning pieces, 40 inches wide. And just,
yeah, they're lots of fun to investigate, and it's a lot of fun.
So what will someone get when they see the Kelly collection at the show? What will they walk away with?
I think they'll walk away with a better understanding of Kate's contribution to the art world, with her depiction of the hula dancers and her hula dancer bronze, which is here as well. It's the first time it's been bronzed. I don't know if it was ever bronzed or what, but that it was done. It's a beautiful job. It was a beautiful, beautiful job. And let's see, what else would they? I think also just the breadth of media that John used in depicting hula, from the oil to a drawing to pastels and color and black and white. It's just kind of everything is there for, which is really kind of unusual, very unusual. So I think that people get a better idea of hula as a, you know, there's a picture of a kid in her tutu, she's the kid is a hula dancer and clearly has a little hula outfit on. It's so cute. And it's just, there's just such beautiful images of people that, yeah.
How long did it take you to put this all together for the show?
Well, I had a very short amount of time, as you well know.
You did a great job.
But I started, I guess, in May, I think end of May, as I recall, when we talked about it. So it was like pretty much June and July, you know. It was basically, the framer is the person I feel the most for, because she had to do so much work.
How many pieces do you have on display?
Well, there's 20 photographs, and there are about 15 prints. So yeah, there's a lot. So it's a big show.
The show runs until August 28th.
It does.
And we have 11 other artists in the show.
Phenomenal artists. The gorgeous thing about this show is everyone's commitment to hula and depicting hula in this very beautiful way. It's very moving to see all the different ways that hula is expressed. You know, other photographs and sculptures and oil. It's just really great. And your photographs are extraordinary. Just really beautiful images of people doing hula.
We have artists ranging from a kumu hula, who teaches the hula ki'i style with the puppets, and to wonderful depictions of the lei used in hula and things like that. So it's a wide range.
Right. It is. It's a really great range. Yes. I hope people can make it down here because it's.
The show is on until August 28th at the Downtown Arts Center, Tuesday through Sunday, 11 to 6.
Right.
There's no admission. There is parking in the building. Chinatown Gateway Plaza. And we hope everyone will come down to see the show, and particularly the remarkable collection from the Holy Estate. So thank you, John, for organizing.
Oh, my pleasure. I was grateful for the opportunity.
Did you folks have any questions?
What about the house? Where is the house? Is that house, is it open to?
No, it's a private home.
Privately owned. And where was it? Well, where is it?
It's in the Black Point
Black.
area.
Well, thank you. It's a great show.
So what is your connection to the family?
I'm the daughter. I'm the wife of the granddaughter. I guess is how you would say it. The granddaughter-in-law.
That's cute. It's great that you love the work so much.
It sounds like you went through a lot of, here's, kind of given a box, here's the collection, and you got to really look through it and really explore it. Do you feel like you're kind of bringing it back?
I was really fortunate. There were actually literally boxes and boxes and boxes of articles, newspaper, just little pieces, clips, newspaper articles, magazines, all kinds of written material, published material that represented John and Kate's work. So I put those together in a database, in a like a whatever, have some kind of, it's in a database. It's in a and so they're all like scanned and avail. You know, I can go back and read them again and stuff. So it's a that really gave me a great history of both of their contribution. As I learned that John did an art show in New York in 1934. That is not really well known.
Yeah.
And when he did that, the critics went completely crazy. They just thought he was the cat's pajamas, and they wanted, you know, all they wanted was more, and they wanted him to come back, and he was like, no. No, thanks. But yeah, he was every time he was in an exhibit, he was in 2 shows in New York, and both of them were just really, the critics went wild. So it was even in Art Digest, Art Magazine, which is like very difficult to get into. So
He also had a show in Chicago too.
yeah, he had a show in Chicago. He had a show in Texas that his son put together when he was teaching there. So he didn't do a lot of exhibits. Most of his exhibits have been here in Honolulu.
And many people will know his son, John Kelly.
Yes.
He was from Save Our Surf. He was
Right.
a big environmentalist in the 60s and 70s in particular.
Definitely.
And his daughter-in-law, Amelia Kelly, who taught at the University of Hawaii.
Yes. She was a cultural anthropologist and an activist, and really put a lot of historical information about Hawaiian culture. She was the first to come up with concepts of pre-contact agriculture, and she put together a tremendous amount of information about Hawaiian culture.
And as you say, she was one of John's grandfather in this case. One of his
She
favorite
was
models.
Yes, she was the daughter-in-law, and she was one of his favorite models. She was an extraordinarily gorgeous person, and yeah, she's in quite a few images. Yeah.
Some of his most iconic prints.
Sorry?
Some of his most iconic prints have married.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Any other
Yeah.
questions?
I just have a curiosity question, type of question. I was interested or intrigued by the Baha'i connection there,
Mhm.
Kelly's. By chance, is Florence Kelly of the Baha'i chapter here connected in any way with the family? Or is it
What's her name?
Florence Kelly.
I don't
That's
think.
both probably a
I don't think there's a
Okay.
relationship. We do have like a distant cousin who's in Baha'i. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John, for organizing this great show and for talking with us today.
Well, thank you. Hope everybody makes it to the show and see it.
It's on until the 28th of August. Actually, the 28th we're taking the show down, so be here by the 27th.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.